Coming at you tonight, all the way from San Diego to the Swiss Alps. Welcome to The Tonight Show with Saron Yitbarek. Joining us tonight, Adrian Holovaty, musician and founder of Soundslice. Nadia Odunayo, dancer and founder of The Storygraph. And Phil Sturgeon, roving climate activist and founder of API's You Won't Hate. Brought to you thanks to our generous patron, Tom Preston Werner of Preston Werner Ventures. And now, the moment you didn't know you were waiting for. Here's your host, the one, the only, Saron Yitbarek.
I am not used to heels. This is just for you guys. You are very, very special. Welcome to the TNT Show. My name is Saron. I'm going to be your host for this evening. I'm so excited to be here today. If you're at this event and you're anything like me, you're probably a bit of a rebel. You're tired of the way things are. The 1% getting wealthier, Silicon Valley solving nothing but rich people problems. You want to help regular, everyday people solve real, everyday problems, and you've come to the perfect place. A luxurious 5-star hotel at the top of the Swiss Alps. At 4,000 feet above sea level, it's the perfect vantage point to look down on our users. It's really tough these days to get by. It used to be that you could just have one job. You do that job, you go home to your family, spend time with the kids, go back to work, and that would be all. But those days are long gone. Now it's all about the side hustle and making that big cash money. People hear about folks making millions, and they're starting to dream big too. They want to find a gap in the marketplace and build something huge. That's right, they're launching a newsletter. And they've got the Twitter thread to tell you all about it. Who has time for kids when you can spend that time begging strangers online to subscribe? I do love a good newsletter. I subscribe to a ton of them. I don't actually read them, but I do subscribe. You see, I don't want my content coming to me randomly in the wild. That's just not invasive enough. I want my content coming straight to my inbox, where it can hunt me down and find me. But I am an advocate of newsletters. I think they're very important. With the way social media is going, you just can't build your audience on someone else's platform. You want to own your audience. Really lock them in so they can never escape. Find them wherever they are and follow them around wherever they go, like a stalker, or that Google ad for pants you clicked on by mistake. It's not just social media that's been changing, job titles have been changing too. It's been really fascinating to see the way jobs have changed over time, even though people are doing the exact same work. A writer is now a content strategist. A freelancer is now a consultant. Even my DoorDash got an upgrade. He's not a driver, he's a fractional delivery officer. But I do think that branding is important. If you want to level up, you have to reach for something high. You gotta aim high and reach for a name you aspire to be, which is why I make my daughter call me Beyonce. It is really tough out there. People are doing everything they can to put food on the table. They're driving Lyft, they're doing DoorDash, and I myself am not immune to the ups and downs of this economy. I've had to make some great personal sacrifices for my family as well. I was forced to go out and raise $2 million in seed funding for my AI rapper startup. And it's been hard. It's tough out there trying to create a dystopian future that everyone's afraid of. Trying to steal Scarlett Johansson's voice. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that I want to replace people's jobs with AI. I just don't care about people's jobs. But we all know that trickle-down economics works. My money's up here, and you get a little trickle down there. It's perfect. But unfortunately for me, I've already missed some key milestones. I'm too old to be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, but I think I can still defraud my investors in 5 years or less. Speaking of AI, my husband is an AI engineer, and he's actually right there. Could we give him a round of applause? He's never heard this routine, so he has no idea what's coming. This is great. My husband is an AI engineer. He's a loving father, an amazing partner, just an all-around wonderful guy. But sometimes he gets a little overwhelmed. When you ask him a question and it's all just too much, he'll wave his hands and go, "Too many questions." We're married, so I'm on the free plan. It comes with a low token limit. I love him dearly, but sometimes he needs a couple rounds to get the job right. He needs some examples, some breakthroughs, some breakdowns, some key walkthroughs. So I've been reading a lot of Cosmo to help me out, and they've got a great article. It's perfect. 10 prompts to get your husband to take out the trash. He's a brilliant engineer. He has built machine learning algorithms that millions of people use every single day, and he's also single-handedly built the infrastructure for the story graph, which serves hundreds of millions of requests per month. And as a Black engineer, he's a role model to little Black boys and girls all over the world who might one day want to get into technology. So naturally, my inspiration is Steve Jobs. True story, I watched my husband work in tech for years, and it wasn't until I read a book about a hippie from San Francisco for me to go, maybe I can do this. Just like most YC hopefuls, I just really needed a rich white man to look up to. I read that book and vowed to be just like Steve, down to his turtlenecks. But unfortunately for me, I don't have a deep voice, so Elizabeth Holmes beat me to it. I'm also a mother. I have a beautiful baby girl waiting for me back in San Diego. Had the first baby, vaginal delivery, terrible, debilitating postpartum depression, and I decided to never get pregnant again. So for the second kid, we decided to go with a surrogacy. True story, we have a surrogate, we've paid the money, we've signed the paperwork, baby number 2 is on its way. Thank you. Now, here's the thing about your first pregnancy. It's kind of like rolling your own authentication. It seems like a good idea, and then you do it and you realize it's better just to outsource it. So for baby number 2, we're going with an external hosted solution. I'm a big believer in equality in the marriage, and having a surrogate really takes that to the next level. We both get to be the man in our relationship, doing the bare minimum and still getting the credit. I do love being a mom, and I think a lot about how I want to raise my baby girl. I want her to grow up to be a strong, independent woman, free of gender norms. I want to be a rich AI billionaire, a true beacon of feminism, because I want to show her that one day she too can pay the nanny to do the grocery shopping. Thank you all so much. You've been a great audience. We have our first guest coming to the stage. She is a developer, she is a founder, she is a dancer, and she's single. Please welcome Nadia Odunayo. All right. Hi, Nadia.
Hi, Saron.
You look incredible.
Thank you so much.
One-upping me as always.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so Nadia, you are the founder of The Story Graph. For folks who may not be familiar with The Story Graph, tell us what that is.
So the Story Graph is a reading, tracking, and recommendations app. So we help you choose your next book based on your mood or any themes or topics that you're interested in.
So you came up with this idea 5 years ago. You have millions of users at this point. You're doing very, very well. And it's profitable, but bootstrapped and profitable, by the way. Bootstrapped and profitable. You have so much to be proud of. Where did this idea come from?
So the original idea was actually a side project that I had maybe 10 years ago at this point. So I was an avid user of Goodreads. It was my favorite app at one point. But I wanted to create my own dashboard of reading lists that I could track my progress through, and it just wasn't possible on Goodreads. So I had a side project that used the Goodreads API. So you would sign into your Goodreads account, and then it would take your shelves and generate a pretty dashboard of progress bars, essentially. So that was the original idea. And then how it became a fully fledged Goodreads alternative was that when I found myself in a situation where I had 4 years of runway, I didn't want to get a job, and I never had time to work on my side project. So I decided to take dust off the side project. I spent a week working on it, and I had so much fun. And I said to myself, I want to work in books. Like, this is the most fulfilled I've ever felt as a developer. And so at that point, I knew that I had to detach myself a little bit from my side project and start talking to readers and see, is there a pain point that I could fulfill and build a product that would be successful in the book space. And so once I started with friends who read. I discovered Bookstagram, which is the books corner of Instagram. I remember my friend told me about it, and I was like, how do I join it? But you just search the hashtag, and I started cold DMing Instagrammers who spoke about books. And I just had conversations for 3 months with people. And the thing is, I never brought up Goodreads in my questions. But when I asked them about pain points and things they needed, they ended up being pain points with Goodreads. So naturally, as I started to fulfill their pain points, I ended up building a Goodreads alternative.
Got you. So you've had many highlights throughout the last 5 years. You've had moments where things have gone viral. You've gotten thousands of retweets, sometimes in succession. What was the moment when you knew this was going to be big?
The first moment where I thought, oh, I'm onto something here, was I had posted on Instagram. So I started building an Instagram following before I even had a product. So I was just posting what I was reading, and I was building up, dozens of followers. And when I had done enough customer research to build a beta, I decided that I wanted to get an invested group of beta testers. So I did an Instagram story, and I said, pay me $5 a month, and you get to have a call with me once a month and shape the product. And a bunch of people actually went for this. And I remember the product was very bare bones and very basic at this point. I was still using Goodreads to track my reading, because I need everything tracked. I was still using Goodreads. And I had a call with this one woman, and she was so excited about this product that even I was a bit embarrassed about at the time. And she was like, this is perfect, this is just what I need. So I think that was the first time where I had an inkling that if another person is so excited about this, then even more so than I am at this point, in terms of I was excited by the potential. I wasn't excited by what I had, but this woman was, and she was paying me $5 a month to be part of this program. That's the first time when I thought, okay, I think I'm going to keep going with this.
Mm-hmm. And you have tons of competitors. There are so many. I feel like every other day I see someone go, oh, I'm starting a Goodreads alternative. There's so many people trying to get in this space. What was that like for you to watch all these companies before you and after you pop up out of nowhere?
So it's changed, right, over time, depending on where we're at with our journey. So at the beginning, when it was just me, so when I first started, for most of the first year, I was essentially a solo founder doing everything. And it was quite intimidating when you'd see other competitors post about their Goodreads alternative, and they were often teams of people, some were VC-backed, some were second or third time founders. And so at that point, it was quite intimidating. But I mentioned that I had the runway, and I didn't want to get a job at that point. And I kind of thought, I had momentum, so I just thought to myself, I'm going to keep going with the momentum and not worry about it until such time that there's no space for my product or my product grows. And then when we started taking off, and as we've gotten bigger and we've faced a lot of challenges, when I do see new competitors, it's interesting. I take a look, because just to be cute. I really try not to look too much at my competitors, because I think it's irrelevant. You just got to focus on serving the needs of your customers. But people send it to me. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? But because I have confidence that I'm focusing on the needs of my customers, and we have built up, originally we had a niche that was mood reading, so that was our kind of barrier or moat, or the thing that made us different. And now we've just built up lots of goodwill, we have people who are invested, we have paying customers. So it's just more, if anything, just shows that there is this is a space, this is a need that people have. And also, our app might be great for a lot of people, another app might be great for other people, but I don't feel intimidated anymore. It's just interesting. Because I also know all the challenges, especially when it's a new company, I know all the challenges that we've had to face to get to where we are. And so I kind of the longer we go on, it's we compound that lead, if that makes sense.
Because that's the thing, when people think about building a book tracking app, I think they think it's really easy.
Yes, 100%.
It looks like it should be easy, but I know you work with my husband. Full disclosure, is that a full disclosure? You two are co-founders, you two are partners. But it's funny how people think this can be like a weekend project. But I've seen all the work that goes into it, and it's very complicated. So when you see people try to replicate what you've done over a hackathon,
yes,
what's going on in your mind?
I just know it's not possible, because it's one thing to build a simple interface to, show a book page and have a button that says to read, mark as read. But it's another thing when you've got to deal with, I want to track how many pages I've read every day, and I'm reading the audiobook, and I want that converted to pages, and I'm reading this. And we have lots of unique features too as well. So we've got things like buddy reads and read-alongs, and we've just gone through all the edge cases. I mean, even with the Goodreads import, we have a Goodreads import, and we've been iterating on that for years. And there are so many edge cases of, the types of books people have on their export and all that kind of stuff. So it's one thing building the original, the initial, skeleton of a book tracking website. But when it comes to actually running one that's used by tens of thousands or millions of users, it's a whole different ballgame, and there's a whole different set of problems that you need to worry about.
So speaking of competitors, there's this one company that I remember you telling me about. I don't remember when this was. Was it last year? But there was this one company that just completely ripped you off. And I don't know if someone sent it to you or you came across it. What's the story behind that?
So the story behind that is I was just going through Twitter mentions, and I just saw a Twitter mention that said, "Looks like Storygraph, how is this different?" So I was like, what's this? So I click on it, and someone else had posted, "Did anyone else get this unsolicited email from Reader's Vibe," or whatever it was called, something like that. I'm not sure about it, because it's it was an unsecure website or something like that. So we managed to visit the page, and it was a complete rip-off of all of our features. And literally, it was they changed the font, they changed the names of the features. So we have a feature called Buddy Reads. They called theirs Pal Reads. It was just...
That is very minimal effort.
It was really minimal effort. And it was funny because I felt like there were a couple of things that we were going to do that was on our public roadmap that they said they had already. And it was one of those sign up, coming soon situations. So again, it was kind of a bit funny to us. It was shocking to see it so blatant, but then we were like, yeah, but they have to run the thing. They have to, first of all, build people's trust, which they've already started off on a bad foot, because it looked like there was all this fuss on social media of people saying, how did they get our email? They've just sent this mass email, nobody knew. The website was insecure, so you couldn't see who was behind it easily. So already they were starting off on not a strong foot. And then we knew, again, it's one thing to say we have all these features, but all the work and the edge cases and actually supporting them when things go wrong is another ballgame.
Are they still around? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean,
that's good of you.
I don't know.
I would check every day.
No, you look at it, and then because you can't, you'll end up getting bogged down. And I've just got to focus on my customers and what they want. And also, I want to make sure that I don't inadvertently get influenced by what I see on someone else's website. In fact, even just today, I posted something on Instagram because we're going to do a monthly wrap-up, and I know people have been asking for a calendar view. And I know that there's another app that does a calendar view. And I don't want to, as I go into building it, I don't want to look at their calendar view because I don't want to be influenced. I want to do the best thing for my customers. It may end up looking similar, or it could be completely different. And when I asked our users for feedback today, I specifically said, please do not send me screenshots of any other app. If you want, you can do your own mockups, but don't send me screenshots of any other app, because I know everyone will just be like, do it like this app. And we don't want to do that. I want to do what's best for the customers.
That is great. Okay. So one thing that I've noticed about following StoryGraph over the years is people are so nosy.
Yeah.
People really want to know, like they want to see your code, they want to know how your algorithms work. They are really just up in your business. How do you deal with people constantly asking for like your private, coding and your private information?
So we say no. It's funny. I used to be more open, as in like I wouldn't share my code, but I would be more open, especially when I was when I was completely solo, of how I did things high level, because I thought, why not? If you're copying me, you're always just going to be behind me, so why not? But we were in a situation, Rob and I, where like a big company, essentially they were secretly building a competitor, and we're trying to figure out like how Rob was doing his algorithms. And we cottoned on, like, because there was something funny off about the call, and they did it under the guise of an acquisition or a partnership or something like that. And then we realized something was off. And since then, I had my guard up a lot more. But the things, we do like live shows on Instagram now and again. And I said to Rob, we just tell them that's our secret sauce. No, we don't talk about that. That's our secret sauce. And people understand, because it's like, yeah, of course we're not going to share how we're doing things. And especially because the product is just me and Rob building it. So I'm doing all the web and app development, and Rob does all the AI machine learning, and he runs our infrastructure, as you said, in your amazing set, by the way. And so we need to protect what we're working on, because we spent several hours experimenting, trying to do new things. We figure out new pieces of software that we can use and build a lot of things custom, and that's our secret sauce. We can't just tell people how we're doing that. It is wild, the emails I get. Like random people, everything from random coders to big companies, basically asking, how do you do this? Because we're doing something similar. And then
It makes sense. Why would you confess in an email?
I don't know.
That makes no sense. So we've talked about a lot of great things about TSG, but there have been some tough moments. And there's this one moment where you talk about in your really great keynote about a moment where you were in the bathroom, and it was a very dark time for you. Can you share that story with us?
So that's funny, because it's actually almost exactly the 4-year anniversary of that. I think yesterday would have been exactly the 4-year anniversary of this story I'm going to tell. So it's 2020. 16th of June, day one of this 3-day saga. Well, anyway. And I start getting a lot of notifications, and there's more activity on the site. Turns out there's this tweet that's been going viral, like thousands and thousands of retweets and likes, because it essentially says, it basically calls out StoryGraph. It calls out, it's got some anti-Amazon stuff in there. It calls out that it's owned by a black woman. And this was about a few weeks after George Floyd's murder. So there was a lot of, in the Black Lives Matter movement, it was in its phase of trying to uplift black creators. So that resonated. It's the pandemic, so there's been an uptick in reading. And essentially this tweet just hit all the key points, and it just exploded. And then there was a follow-on tweet the second day where someone did a 4-slide presentation in Comic Sans that was basically why you should stop using Goodreads and use StoryGraph. And that also kicked off. And essentially, we went from 1,000 users to 20,000 users in 3 days. And our sidekick queue was like 18,300 and something. And it was just stuck. And busy was 0. And it's because the site had not been designed to handle that many concurrent users. Before that time, there'd been maybe 1 to 5 people on the app ever. And now there were thousands trying to get on. And I had just never dealt with this. And I'm a solo dev. Rob is my co-founder, but I'm the only one doing the website. At the time, we just had the website. And everything comes to a standstill. And I remember we had to deal with our own domain. So Rob had to re-architect some of his systems that were handling the Goodreads imports and things like that. And I had to do my side, which was also Goodreads imports, but like loading in people's data, because it was just so not performant. It was going to take weeks or maybe months for everybody to get their stuff. And essentially, I remember we were on a video call, and we'd kind of said, okay, Rob, you handle that, I'm going to handle this. And I just remember sitting there and being like, I don't know what to do. And I said to Rob, hey, Rob, how's it going? And Rob was like, yeah, it's all good on my side. How are you? And I was like, fine. And I was on my emails. I didn't know what to do. And I remember thinking, oh, I always wanted something that I did to be successful. And now this is what it is. And I don't want this. And so I went into my bathroom, and in my apartment, for anyone who doesn't know the term flat, in my apartment, there are no windows. It's a windowless bathroom. And I closed the door, it was completely dark, and I sat on the toilet seat, and I was on the verge of tears, because I genuinely thought, this is it, it's done. We're gonna die now, because I don't know what to do. And I was almost going to say, I can't do this, but I really strongly believe in not saying that. So it was on the tip of my tongue, and I was holding back tears, sitting in the dark, and I just said to myself, I can't say that, so therefore I have to be able to do it. So I'm going to pull myself together, and I'm going to get back out there. And it ended up taking 2 weeks for us to get everything back on track, but we did do it.
You did it.
And so, thank you. So I call those the dark days. And whenever we have an outage, which we haven't in a very long time, but whenever we have an outage or an issue, I always say it's never as bad as the 2-week standstill with 18,000 items in the Sidekick queue. So we can get through this.
And now you're handling millions of requests and millions of users, so good for you.
Yeah.
Let's give her another round. That's right. That's right.
Thank you.
So I want you to tell this story that I love about you at a restaurant. You were eating at a restaurant recently, or not, this was a little while ago, I think.
A couple years ago.
But you were with a former business partner, and something pretty cool happened. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I was meeting up with the business partner that I'd worked with before, and it was when I'd left that business that's why I had all that runway. And so we were catching up, and we'd finished eating, and the server came over, and as she was taking our payment, she just said, anything going on for the rest of the day, and up to anything good? And you know, people just answer, yeah, like I'm going back to work or whatever. But in my typical fashion, I wanted to give, a bit of a varied answer. So I was like, well, I'm going to go work out, then I'm going to go read. And when I said read, this woman's face lit up. And she started saying like, oh, I'm reading a great book. It's this. You should definitely read it, which is something that slightly annoys me when people say that, when they don't know your reading preferences. So they, like, you don't know that I should read this book. But she lit up. And so my plan was to see, like, maybe she tracks on Goodreads, and I was going to just say, oh, check out Storygraph. Not revealing who I am, just be like, check out Storygraph. So I asked her, do you track your reading at all? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, do you have a place where you list what you read? Yeah, I use Goodreads. And I was like, oh, cool. Oh, I also use this thing called Storygraph. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And she's like, it's so good, you need to get it. It's got this, it's got this, it's got this. And keep in mind, it's a packed restaurant. She's got the card machine, the restaurant's busy, stuff's going on. And I don't know what to do. I am stunned, because this is like 3 years ago. So we didn't even have, maybe we had like hundreds of thousands of users at this point, not where we are now. And she's just selling it, and her eyes, she's trying to convince me that, please go check this thing out. And I'm the longer she goes on, the harder it is for me to stop her. So I'm just silent, like, and then my ex-business partner, he goes, well, Nadia here is the creator of the story graph. And then I burst into tears. And now I'm like sobbing. And as I'm sobbing, the woman's like, well, you should be very proud of yourself because this thing you've done is amazing. And everyone in the restaurant is now looking over like, what's going on? Because this server was meant to just take payment. She's made the customer cry, and she's still going in at her. And this other guy's just sitting there smiling like this. Oh, this is great. And so I was just crying, and I was like, thank you. And then the funny thing is, Theo, my friend, who was with me, knowing that it was just me and Rob full time on this product, and knowing that most people didn't know that, said to the woman, well, do you know how many people are behind Storygraph? She was like, so many people are behind you. On TikTok, everybody's behind you. All the people who work here, they're all behind you. And it was just, so it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, honestly.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It was so good.
So you are not only a founder and developer, an amazing storyteller, by the way, isn't she? Oh my goodness. But you're also a dancer.
I am. It's my main hobby after reading, yes.
And you've been dancing for 10 years. And I believe we have a little clip of Nadia dancing.
What?
Do we want to see a clip of Nadia dancing?
What?
I think we do.
Oh!
Can you choose your I know you like it when I remind you that I'm yours. I push it on you real good like the glitter fall. Let me take her in my love. Know you so everyone knows. I got my name on your lips. Get what you want, it's superstar. Triple gold. I'm a renegade, renegade. I'm a renegade, renegade. I'm a renegade, renegade. I'm a renegade, renegade. Renegade. Come on, renegade. Come on, renegade. Come on, renegade.
You made the whole thing. Wow.
You're apparently an amazing director, cinematographer, fashion. I mean, that was just an incredible video. That was the 10-year anniversary video, I believe, right? That happened very recently for you?
Yeah, I got into this thing because I always like creating projects for myself where every year on my anniversary, my dance anniversary being the first dance class I went to, the first real dance class I went to, which was March 10th. So after 5 years, I started doing this thing every year. And they kept on getting better and better. And so I said to myself, I have to stop on year 10 because it's too much pressure. And so I thought a good showcase would be all the styles I've done, different locations, different outfits. And so, yeah, that's what I put together.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
So what is the future of TSG? What are some things that are coming up that you'd like to share?
Ooh, so we are, right now I'm doing a lot of background maintenance work. We're doing a lot of performance, UX, UI. So I think that the main focus right now is a lot of polish, performance polish, because we've got an UX. I want to get the UX and the UI to be absolutely excellent because it's really good now, but I think we are like unparalleled in terms of features, but not everybody knows all of the features. Like every day there'll be someone that says, wow, I didn't know you had that, I didn't know you had this. And so my number one goal for this year is to just, by the end of the year, everything is slick, everything is fast, and everyone it's just a joy to use. I want people to say the app is a joy to use. And we don't have any push notifications on the app. And that was very intentional at the beginning, because I wanted, at the time when I started building the app, a lot of people were saying they were getting burnt out from social media, burnt out from Goodreads, and I didn't want another app that was another badge. But now we have book clubs, read-alongs, all these kind of social reading features we need to develop. We need to have push notifications, and we're working on new shareable graphics. So there's a lot coming up, and we also have a giveaways platform where publishers and authors can host competitions for people to win their books. And right now it's like half self-service, and we want to just make it self-service and just have authors and publishers just like running free with that. So lots of fun stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nadia. Let's give her a round of applause. Next up, we have developer, web framework, creator, musician, Adrian Holovaty. So Adrian, I don't know if you guys noticed, but these were the two on the podcast episodes. That was a little sneak peek of the show, by the way, in case you didn't pick up on that. Adrian, so glad to have you on the TNT Show. Thank you so much for being here. So you are probably best known for creating Django. You've done a lot of things in your career, but you're probably best known for that. But I actually don't want to start there. I want to start with something you released kind of recently. You released an album, a music album, a guitar album. And it is called, I want you guys to just
It's the worst name ever.
It's kind of the worst name ever. It's called, I thought this was the genre. It's called melodic guitar music. That's the name of the album.
I have an explanation that is actually kind of...
What is the explanation? Please.
It's a blend of genres, and I wanted to make a statement that it is not a particular genre. The genre is melodic guitar music.
Okay.
Does that even make sense?
Sure.
A little pretentious.
Yeah, sure. But I bought it and I listened to it and I put it in the podcast and it was very good. All the music from the podcast was from that album. So tell me about the creation of this album. I know you've been playing guitar for a really long time, but this is the first one for you.
Yeah, I've been posting YouTube videos since YouTube came out, like 2007 or something, and that's really fun and silly, but it's deeply unsatisfying because everything you do is just kind of this drive-by thing that you just sort of like put out there, and then everybody forgets. It gets like a little bump in viewers, and then everybody forgets it. And it's also not a very satisfying listening experience because, I as the musician, I'm always thinking, oh shoot, when the person's watching my video, they're going to be constantly tempted by all these related videos. It's just not a good scene. So I wanted to make something that's an actual like work of art, not to be too pretentious about it, but something that stands on its own outside that context that you can just listen to independently.
And you've been posting your work on YouTube for many years, starting in 2007, I believe. And there was one of your early videos that actually did pretty well. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, that was the craziest thing ever, and I still don't know how it happened. So my very first video was the MacGyver theme song on guitar, and like 20 people watched it, because I had like 2 subscribers or something, and then time passes, like it's like 3 or 4 months later or something, and I wake up one morning and I had a text from my brother-in-law, and it just said, "You're on YouTube," and I was like, okay, that's sort of ominous. What does that even mean? And didn't really think anything of it. So then I opened my email, and it's just like new comment from YouTube, hundreds. So I'm like, something's going on here. I check, and yeah, my video got 1 million views in a matter of hours, and it turns out it had been the main video on the YouTube homepage back in the day when they actually did that for like indie people. Now it's probably all like corporate nonsense, but yeah, like you type in youtube.com and you're not logged in, you see that thing. So yeah, that was an onslaught of people, not all necessarily nice people. Yeah, 40% of the comments are like, "You suck at guitar, the only thing you know how to play is the MacGyver theme song." this is so stupid. So then that inspired me to post more. Of course,
Good for you. Good for you.
You got to
I like
find that ignition from something. So, of course, reacting to these comments being like, oh, you're not a real musician, you're just playing the TV theme songs, I did a very serious jazz standard, which these guys no doubt know, called All the Things You Are, posted that as a follow-up video, and then of course, like, everyone's like, what is this? I want TV theme shows. So, it was kind of like wavy for a while, and eventually I found my voice. But yeah, I never did find out if anybody knows how it was selected for the YouTube homepage back in those days. I'm very curious. Maybe there's some old school YouTube employees out there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you all, but I would love to see that video. Would you guys like to see that video?
No!
I'd love to see it.
It's so old.
I think we should play it.
It's like 10 DPI. You're like, oh. Ugh. Recognize it?
All right. How does it feel to watch that after all these years?
The world has changed.
So moving on from music, you've done a lot of cool projects over the years. You've worked on a bunch of different things, different startups, different side projects, and one of those is really interesting because it both helped the Google Mapping API become a thing and was also featured at MoMA?
Yeah.
Museum of
so
Modern Art? Yeah.
we got to dig way back for this one. It's 2004, I think. So the state of the art for maps online was horrible. MapQuest was like the main thing. You remember it?
MapQuest.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So anytime you wanted to pan the map, it would refresh the entire page. It's a horrible experience. So Google Maps comes out with the huge innovation where you can just drag on the map and it'll automatically load the other map tiles via Ajax, which was then really, really new. And the cool thing about that was you could, because it was being assembled in your web browser, it was in theory possible to reverse engineer it and then put a map on your own website without Google's permission. So that's what a couple of us did, including myself. We reverse engineered the Google Maps API, and I at the same time was looking for an apartment in Chicago and found the Chicago police had a website with crime data, but it was like really bad. And I also found out I could reverse engineer that and like basically do the equivalent of select star from crimes and like get all the crime data, possibly including some stuff that shouldn't have been public. So I combined those onto a site called chicagocrime.org, which was one of the original Google Maps mashups. That's such an antiquated term. It just sounds so old school. And that and a site called housingmaps.com, which was Craigslist plus Google Maps by Paul Rademacher. Those were like, yeah, the original Google Maps mashups. And the funny thing about that is I launched it originally anonymously for two reasons. I was scared that Google would go after me for kind of obvious reasons for reverse engineering their API, but then I was also scared that criminals would come after me for uncovering their crimes. And in fact, the day it launched, I just had like an anonymous chicagocrime@gmail.com. I got an email from the Chicago Police Department, and it was a one-liner. It just said, please contact us. So I did. I did, and they were very cool. They actually said, I'm surprised nobody did this earlier. They invited me to their main headquarters.
Did you go?
I went. But here's the really disappointing
Feels like
thing.
a trap.
Here's the really disappointing thing. They were like, okay, this guy's like a techie. We'll show him some of our cool technology. So they show me some sort of device that they have in their police cars that like gives information about whatever car they're like looking at or whatever. And I'm like, oh, it's like SCMODs. Does anyone know that reference? State, county, Thunder Municipal Data System. It's from the Blues Brothers. So, and I was so proud of my quick wit, and they're just looking at me blankly, like, what is SCMODs? And also, even if they had known, the movie Blues Brothers does not portray the Chicago Police Department in a good light. So in retrospect, it was not a good move. Anyway, yes, I met with them, and I lived to tell the tale.
I'm glad that you're here today.
Oh, and it was in MoMA also.
And it was in MoMA. How did that happen?
I don't know.
Okay.
I heard from someone one day, hey,
They didn't even tell
MoMA, and I saw a screenshot of your website on the wall. They didn't notify me.
They didn't give you an invite, a ticket, nothing? No?
It's
Okay.
that New York-Chicago rivalry. I don't know.
So we have to talk about Django.
Sure.
Tell me the origin story. How did it all start?
Well, I was working at a newspaper in Lawrence, Kansas, in the States, and as a programmer for a newspaper, which was kind of a new concept back then. I studied journalism, and I was like on this big kick of newspapers and news websites ought to hire programmers because they can make interesting ways of telling stories, like making searchable databases. Anyway, so that was my job, was to like make interactive web applications in a news context. And in a news context, I don't know if any of you have any journalism experience, but things happen out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you have to jump on it and tell the story by tomorrow. So my boss would say, hey, there's some big news thing happened. We got this Excel file of all these things. Make a searchable database today. And back in those days, there weren't very many good tools for that. So out of necessity, we made this collection of scripts that let us make database-driven web applications very, very quickly. And then after iterating on that for like a year or two, we decided to try to convince our bosses to open source it because I didn't want to live in this little podunk town. It was actually a pretty cool town, but I didn't want to live there forever. And I really, really liked this code, so I wanted to selfishly make it open source so I could always use it for the rest of my life. Mm. And to their credit, they allowed us to open source it, and we named it after my favorite jazz guitar player, Django Reinhardt. My ulterior motive being let people know about the great music of Django Reinhardt.
Has that worked?
It has backfired. So it worked in that, sure, a lot of people learned about Django Reinhardt, but the people in the Django Reinhardt world are kind of continually confused. Like, just last week I was at a Django Reinhardt guitar camp, instructional camp in Massachusetts, and a guy told me, yeah, I was searching for Django Reinhardt Festival, and some like tech conference came up. So yeah, but I mean, it's probably a net win on both sides.
So this was in 2005, I believe? What year are we talking here?
I
Early
think
2000s,
so.
right?
I think so, yeah.
What was the web development world like at that point? Were there other competing Python frameworks? What was the world like at that point?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting lesson here. So I went to PyCon in Washington, D.C. in 2003 or 2004, and there was a keynote speaker who basically had a talk all about there's too many Python web frameworks, and this was before Django was released. And she had a slide with just names of frameworks, and it took up the entire slide. It was like 50 names. And this was around the time where Simon Wilson and I, who's the other developer who worked with me on this, he and I were thinking about open sourcing this, and then we saw that talk, and we were like, oh, it would just be really lame to add another name to that list, wouldn't it? But I got the guts to do a lightning talk at PyCon. I showed what we had. It didn't have a name yet. It was just called the CMS. And enough people came up to me afterward and were really excited, and that's kind of what put us over the edge and convinced us to do it. But yeah, I guess the lesson is, even if there's a lot of stuff, maybe you have a unique spin on it that will resonate with people.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me about the moment when you knew Django was going to take off, the moment you knew that you really had something there. What was that like?
When we did the first Django Con, well, I guess sort of it maybe had already taken off if there was a con, but
You're
it was
doing all
still
right.
kind of small.
Yeah. How many people at the conference?
I don't know, 200 or
Okay.
something. On the Google campus, and my favorite memory of that is a guy who spoke no English from Japan came up to me with a paper book about Django that he had written, and he presented it to me. I still get like choked up thinking about this. Like, this guy doesn't even speak my language. He took the time to learn our thing and write a book about it. It's amazing. I think that's going to give me, if I'm ever feeling down, I'll just kind of think about that. It's one of those things that'll keep you
you
alive and moving.
Keep that fire burning, absolutely. So now you're working on something very different called Sound Slice. Do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, that's a website that helps musicians learn music stuff. It's interactive sheet music, and the idea is that you learn best if you see sheet music, and if you're like a guitar player, tablature, and at the same time you see a video of the performance and hear audio, and you can slow it down and loop it. It's sort of like every possible way that someone might want to learn. It's all integrated together, hopefully with a nice slick UI. It's used by music teachers and people, self-learners, and like music companies and stuff.
So I know part of the work that you've done on that app has to do with machine learning. And so I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on just AI in general. Are you more on the nervous, apprehensive side? Are you more excited? Especially since that feels like that's been a theme in this conference, so far. What are your thoughts on the future of AI?
Okay, that's a good question. I am definitely worried about LLMs and the ability, and anything that generates stuff. I like to make the distinction between stuff that generates, machine learning that generates stuff versus machine learning that deduces stuff. So I'm really concerned about not having a sense of what reality is anymore. If you can't trust what videos you see, what audio you hear, what text you read. Like the whole thing about Google saying it's okay to eat rocks a few weeks ago.
And glue on pizza, remember that one? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is the second category of machine learning, which is just extracting stuff, finding it. Machine learning is really, really good at finding patterns in data that a human couldn't find because it's just so subtle. And the way that we use it is for our sheet music scanning feature. So you can take a picture of sheet music and we'll figure out what the notes all are. It's like OCR is for text, but this is for sheet music. And that's something that technology has existed for like 20 years, but it's always been really, really bad because it's just really hard, and using classical image processing techniques, it's basically impossible. So thanks to machine learning, the code can be a lot more subtle and have really, really good results. And I feel totally fine and good about using machine learning for that purpose.
Makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Adrian, for being on the show. Can you give him a round of applause?
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to bring up Phil Sturgeon up to tell us a bit about his journey. So Phil Sturgeon, up on the stage, please.
That was awesome.
All right, welcome, Phil. Thank you so much for being here. So tell us about your journey. You have a very interesting background, interesting story. Tell us about your journey and why you're here today.
Yeah, I'm the crazy person that was spamming the WhatsApp with progress updates from me cycling here from England.
And tell us about what you do at your nonprofit.
So I run a charity called Protect Earth, and we buy up degraded land that no one really wants for anything and just plant it full of trees and create wildlife habitats. And we work with loads of other farmers to help them too, because the government grant systems are all a bit crap, and we help them out using a whole bunch of tech that we've made, like an iOS app, so we can photograph trees, and then you guys can sponsor them on via our Shopify store, and we use a whole bunch of tech to help reforestation projects that otherwise wouldn't happen.
And one thing that I read about you that's very interesting is that you do not live in a traditional home. You live in an EV van
Yes.
that you call the struggle bus.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I am always on board the struggle bus. There he is.
Here it is. It's actually a nice looking van.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Let's go.
It's always really funny when everyone's like, oh yeah, you're going to need to get a 4x4 of your own forestry. And I'm like, I'm absolutely fine with my little 2-wheel drive. And I just wedge it right up in the woodlands. It's really fun. So I like it's a little bit better than this now, but it's basically one person bed, folds out. It's usually full of hatchets, machetes, chainsaws, because sometimes we've got to take the wrong tree out of the wrong place before we can whack the right one in there. But yeah, it's got full solar underfloor heating, very fancy. And when I first got it, this is the day after I bought it. Someone was like, "We've got some reusable tree guards that you can use because we're trying to keep our carbon footprint down, even in the reforestation." And so I just threw my old bike packing kit in there and just had my little air mattress and my sleeping bag. And I was like, done. It's a camper van now. That was really fun. But yes, usually got a bike on board. I'm usually parking it in random little bits of the countryside. And I zip around all over the country with my work. So we are on 70 different farms. They're spread from Cornwall to Cumbria. We're getting up to Scotland soon. This was me trying out living in large size vans. You can only really get large diesel ones at this point, especially in my budget. There's something wrong with kind of being like, I run a reforestation charity. I'm trying to save the planet. Check out my massive diesel van. Everything's electric. I've got electric chainsaw, electric strimmer, electric blooming everything, a USB-powered shower, which is quite fun. So on those particularly difficult tree planting jobs, you can just have a little hose down.
How does this affect your love life?
A few experiments have failed in that regard, but my current partner, right when we started dating, she was like, actually, maybe I shouldn't have been dating right now, because she was going off on a trip. She went to Svalbard for a month, which is up in the Arctic Circle, and she was telling me all these amazing adventures when she got back, and she's like, every time you want to go to the toilet, a man with a rifle has to come in case a polar bear kidnaps you. So I was like, she can cope.
Yeah, that's a good partner, right?
I think
there.
our second date was tree planting.
Yeah. Oh, that's really sweet. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, so I'm going to move on to our next section, which is introducing Tom Preston Werner. Tom is the patron of the TNT Show. It is his money that has made this possible, so thank you, Tom. Welcome, Tom, to the stage.
No, we're gonna leave.
All right, hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please, I'd love you to give a huge round of applause to Saron Yitbarek, our brilliant host for the show. And please, if you haven't already listened to the podcast that Paul and Amos sent out on the way here to gather, please do listen to that. It's amazing. It's a really great interview. And Saron edited the whole thing together, and it's just beautifully, beautifully done. So please check that out if you haven't yet. I'd also, since Paul and Amo couldn't thank two people, especially three, let's also thank Paul, Amo, and Abby for making this experience possible. Thank you. So one thing when Paul came to me with the idea for this kind of a show, we started talking about ideas, like what should we be communicating to people when we do a conference like this? Like what is it that's interesting? And I said, you know, there's been a lot of talk about AI recently. Like everyone's pontificating on AI and what's going to happen and theorizing, and it's all just what ifs. But what I love to hear from people when I meet them, when I go to conferences, what I really especially love to hear is what they've done and what they've learned from it. And so we really tried to focus a lot of the content, a lot of what you were going to experience here on exactly that thing, on the stories that we all have from our past experiences, concrete things that we've done and things that we've learned, good things to do, bad things to do, and just what our life experiences have brought to that. So I hope that during this conference you've experienced some of that you've met new people, that you've heard new stories, and that you've learned from other people how to make your life better, maybe a little bit easier based on the experiences that they've had. So I hope that that's happened for you. And for me, listening to these wonderful speakers tonight, and thank you to the speakers, amazing. Another round of applause for Nadia, Adrian, and Phil. I really, really loved hearing your stories, and I wanted to recap a little bit what I learned from them. So Nadia, I learned, and I love this. I talk to people a lot, startups. I talk to them about product market fit and the story about talking to people and getting that early product market fit kind of feedback from people, charging money to see if they wanted to be involved and seeing a response from that. That's such an amazing way to get that early sense of if what you're doing really is working. I love that. Another wonderful thing, focusing on customers instead of your competition. And the idea for me that I carry with me that I love here is a little bit of ignorance can be a really good thing, right? You look too much at your competitors and you start to want to copy them, or it limits what you think. And I think that's what we heard there. And third, and maybe most importantly, never be afraid to slide into those DMs on Instagram if you need to. And then, Adrian, I think I learned some really great things. I learned that if the police ever emails you, it's not necessarily a trap. It's okay to go talk to them. I learned that the MoMA can just, steal your stuff and put it on the wall. I didn't know that was a thing. That's good to know. I learned that naming your project, you have to be a little bit careful lest you anger the community that, you might be really trying to bolster. Not anger, but confuse, right? I think we love naming things, really weird in the tech community. And so a little forethought there can be useful. And so thank you for that. But again, maybe most importantly, and here's something very special about your music, is that I think your album, Melodic Guitar Music, that must have the best SEO, right? That must just, man, you know what I'm in the mood for? Just some melodic guitar music. Boom! First result, all right? And then Phil, I think I learned from you that if I ever need a shower in the woods, USB is the ideal way to power that, so thank you. And I wish there was time to hear more of your stories. So this brings us very close to the finish of our event here, but we have one more thing. This next thing that I'd like to introduce to you, a very special person, and her name is Acon Lin. Acon is 17 years old. She's visiting us here from near Ontario, Canada, and she recently organized her own conference there for a bunch of high school students who are programmers, a conference called Apocalypse. And I think she'll probably talk to you about that, if I had to guess. I don't actually know what she's going to talk about. But she put on a conference for a hackathon for 150 high school students, and I think one of the largest in Canada. And that's really special. She has some amazing stories from that conference that she put on, amazing things that she learned there. And this, she belongs to an organization called Hack Club. Hack Club is an organization, a nonprofit in the US, that helps create computer clubs, programming clubs, hack clubs, for high school students around the US and also internationally to help young people find their people in the community. Not only do they do things in high schools, but they have an incredibly active Slack community, and they run events, summer events. They do internships at their office in Vermont every year, gap years. It's a really wonderful program. I've been on the board of Hack Club for many years now. I know the founder, Zach Latta, who was here last year, so some of you probably had a chance to meet Zach last year. Just a really wonderful program that Acon is part of. And so as part of that program, we got in touch with her, and she was able to come and speak to you tonight. So without further ado, I would like you to give a warm welcome to Acon Lin.
Hi. Oh my God, the mic's working. Okay. I'm supposed to be talking about why we build things, but before I do that, I should probably introduce myself. Hi, I'm Acon, I'm 17, I'm from Hack Club, which is basically a nonprofit that helps teens code and build amazing things. Basically, around a month ago, I ran Canada's largest high school hackathon, and Hack Club's first flagship Canadian hackathon called Apocalypse. Fun fact, none of the Shopify employees except for one actually called it like Apocalypse in the Slack channels. But basically, imagine this. Picture Shopify's office in downtown Toronto. 2 entire floors of their building for 44 hours or 2 days were filled with 150 high schoolers just building cool projects. From like a real life 3-foot-tall pea shooter that shot out peas to like building a radio communication system all from scratch. At the end of the hackathon, people and teens demoed their 40 combined projects that they built in front of others, science fair style. And the story of Apocalypse is actually something that I've already told before at the closing ceremony at Apocalypse in front of those 150 teens. But ultimately, I don't really think that the same speech works here. I think that the difference between telling that story in front of a bunch of teens, mainly extremely young people, younger than me, I'm calling them young guys, who have no experience, who have the dream to build, and just needed affirmation that they could do it, is very, very different from telling a bunch of middle-aged people who have more years. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Okay, it's very different from telling a bunch of old people. No. Okay, a bunch of which who have more years working in the tech industry than I have literally been alive. So instead of this talk about being how I made Apocalypse, I'm going to instead be talking about why I made it, and generally why we should be building things. And I think it's going to be much more nuanced than one reason, so I'm going to be splitting it into 3. The first reason why I build things is because I find the process personally very meaningful to do so. Let's be honest, most of us probably got into building through like, you know, your first like laptop in your parents' like basement or something, or just like doing robotics at school. But basically, we made projects that were personally meaningful to us. The point and vision and reason that Apocalypse existed was to pull people out of the fever dream, which was reality, and give them permission to actually build cool projects that they wanted to build that were not grounded in the real world. I feel like when we lift ourselves from expectations, we are truly able to actually just enjoy the process of creation and learning. And don't lie to me, most of us probably got into the tech industry because we found it fun. So here I was at midnight in my bedroom with the idea for a hackathon, Apocalypse. And I don't know if you guys heard of this platform, kind of similar to Discord, it's called Slack. It's used for work a lot. But Hack Club has one, and it is filled with over 20,000 teens. And I decided to basically type up this post. It's midnight, I'm in my bedroom, my brain's literally half asleep. But I typed out this entire thing explaining the concept of Apocalypse, and I decided to just give it a shot and post it into the Slack. I expected maybe a few reactions, but ultimately I didn't think anybody was actually going to respond. I was very, very wrong. People genuinely wanted to help organize it, and that's kind of just how Apocalypse started, a bunch of teenagers who wanted to create a hackathon that wasn't like any other. And we organized this hackathon in public in the Slack. This was extremely untraditional to do, but it was really fun. Anyone can contribute, and if you contributed enough, you are officially in the organizing team. No applications, no interviews, just create with us and we'll notice you. It's kind of like open sourcing a hackathon, I guess. And the thing is, when you're passionate, other people are going to be passionate too. These people that I organized with, 9 other people, I had not known before meeting them on the Hack Club Slack. We bonded through midnight chats with threads spanning over 1,000 messages long. Like, genuinely, I think midnight was peak productivity time. And the thing is, when you're young, a lot of people tell you that, hey, you need a bunch of like these credentials to actually start creating. You have to have a lot of these things that you have to require before doing so, that it's a prerequisite before you're able to actually build anything. But I feel like when you build for yourself, the act of creation is something that you can take full autonomy of and realize that you have so much freedom in what you're actually able to make. It's not just fun. Making things is what makes us human. The second reason as to why I build things is because the end result is meaningful and it makes an impact. As a person who is still young and still in education, I feel like so much of school is just focused on hitting a rubric and chugging words down a formula. It's so standardized and doesn't really allow for any creativity for you to really build an experiment and like use your creativity and brain and all of that. So I feel like so much of the world today, likewise in the tech industry, is so focused around jargon and just words like AI or crypto, to the point at which these words hold inherent meaning and worth to a project, rather than the value and the depth of the project itself. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hate the way that these buzzwords are used. I think that projects should be able to stand on its own via being functional without needing the sort of prestige that comes with using these words during demos, which is something that I've actually seen a lot during hackathons. And here's the thing, I don't really want Apocalypse to be another traditional hackathon. I want to create an experience for 44 hours for all of these participants that, for this time, you can just forget about reality and completely immerse yourself into this world that we have created. For one, my personal UX design philosophy when organizing events is to make systems that are interactive and fun to engage with. What do I mean by this? For one, we stimulated an economy. So as a hacker, you can get bottle caps, you can use it to purchase swag, and then you can also gain bottle caps to participating in workshops and activities. It's very gamified, it's kind of similar to Fallout. I don't know if you guys are young enough to know that game. I'm sorry. But also, we had a ton of inflation, because guess what? We live in an apocalypse. Then we held an auction on the second night, and the value of a cap basically just completely tanked. It's kind of similar to like the lifetime of a crypto. You get what I mean? But for two, I also did build a custom trading card game for this hackathon, and I can pretty much guarantee to you that this has pretty much never been done before. But my point is, in these 7-ish months of prep, it led to a tangible change in the event experience. We made this event better than it could have been if we didn't put in the time and all the logistics and stuff. And I think the reason ultimately as to why we build things is to make change and an impact on other people's lives. Because if somebody is using a product, it is going to change their lives. It just depends on whether that change is positive or negative. So I think that we should be building things to make other people's lives better. The final... The final reason as to why I build things is because it gets other people building things too, and I think that's pretty neat. Like, personally, guys, that's pretty cool. Anyways, I'm pretty sure you guys have all inspired other people to create their own projects, no matter if you realize it or not. But the things that you build have the potential to completely change somebody else's life. And this is something that I actually didn't realize until this hackathon apocalypse ended, that I had a tangible impact on what other people wanted to do and how they wanted to do about going about doing things. Like, I've been pulled into so many Slack channels of just people organizing their own hackathons very untraditionally with a bunch of wacky themes and concepts, and I love them all. And even though this event only lasted for 44 hours, the impact really does last for a lifetime. Woo! Okay, that was a dignified part of the speech. So, yep, guys, that was Apocalypse. If it sounded interesting, I'm also organizing another hackathon for 2025. It's going to be even more epic. You guys should sponsor it, maybe. I'm also graduating high school in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be taking... Okay, thanks. I'm going to be taking a gap year to be working full-time at Hack Club. My teachers probably think I'm skipping school right now, but that's a later problem for me. But my one ask is to please come after me after this and give me your email if you'd be willing to basically chat with me and stuff about just like advice on like gap years and like life and stuff. That would be extremely helpful, and I would appreciate it a ton. And one last thing, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to be taking a selfie here. Hey guys. don't know if selfies are like a young people thing, but like a bunch of other times I have asked people to take selfies. Y'all are like so awkward. Like, I don't know, man. It's pretty normal. But basically, yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Good. Thank you so much, Acon. We've only got another 44 hours of talks to go. Thank you so much, Filippo and the AV team, for an amazing show tonight. Saron, please come up one more time. Huge round of applause for Saron. What a day! Thank you so much. There's one more thing. Please enjoy your night, everybody. Thank you so much.